All right, welcome to the deep dive. You know, sometimes you look at a sports outcome and think, wow, that was completely random.
Yeah.
Like that infamous December 2021 Bills versus Patriots game
hmm
where the wind was just insane.
Oh, I remember that one.
They barely threw the ball, and the final score combined was just 24 points.
Hmm.
Way, way under what anyone expected. Was that just pure luck or something you could have maybe seen coming?
Well, that's kind of the perfect question for today, actually. We're diving deep into over-under betting in sports.
Right. It's everywhere.
Exactly. It's one of the most popular types of wagers out there, and our mission in this deep dive is really to unpack it.
Hmm.
Understand how it works, reveal the strategy behind it, and challenge that common idea that's just like a flip of a coin.
And we're doing this by digging into the sources you shared, all the articles, research, your notes.
Mhm.
We're pulling out the key stuff from that material.
Yeah, and the fundamental concept here, it isn't about picking which team wins or loses.
No, not at all.
With an over-under bet, you're predicting whether the combined final score, or sometimes another stat, but usually the total score will finish over or under a specific number, a number set by the odds makers.
Okay, so let's start with the absolute basics then. How does that number, that line, actually work?
So the sportsbook sets the line. Let's use football. It's pretty easy to picture. They might set the total points line at, say, 45.5.
Okay, 45.5.
If you bet over, you're basically saying that when the game ends, the total points scored by both teams combined will be more than 45.5.
Got it. So if the game finishes like 27-21, that's 48 total points.
Correct. And 48 is over 45.5, so if you bet the over, you win that bet.
Makes sense.
And if you bet under, naturally you're predicting the opposite, that the combined score will be less than that 45.5 line.
Which would be like maybe a game ending 24-18. Adds up to 42 total.
Precisely. 42 is under 45.5, so the under bet wins in that case.
And that point 0.5, the half point.
Yeah, the point 0.5 is key. It just eliminates the possibility of a tie, or a push, as they call it. Ensures every bet has a clear winner or loser.
Okay. And this isn't just football, right? This concept applies across other sports.
Oh, absolutely. It's the same principle everywhere. In basketball, the lines are just much higher, maybe over under 220.5 total points.
Wow, yeah.
In hockey, it's usually total goals scored, perhaps over under 5.5, sometimes 6.5. But the mechanic, how it works, identical.
And what about the odds? Usually around negative 110, right? Bet 1 pen to win 100.
Typically, yeah. That's kind of the standard juice or vig the sportsbook takes, but they are always exactly negative 110 on both sides.
Right. One of the sources you pulled mentioned the 2024 NBA game, Lakers versus Celtics. The line was 232.5, but the over was priced at a negative 105 and the under at negative 115.
Exactly. And what's interesting there is how that slight difference reflects, well, maybe the market's feeling or the sportsbook's own liability.
So the under being negative 115 means you have to risk a bit more.
Yeah, risk $115 to win $100 compared to risking $105 to win $100 on the over at negative 105. It often suggests where more money might be flowing, or where the book sees a slightly higher probability, even if it's tiny.
So even just reading the odds gives you a little clue.
It shows you're already moving beyond just a pure guess, right? You're starting to think about probability, perceived likelihood, value.
Okay, so let's tackle that perception head on then. Because a lot of people do think over-under betting is just completely random. Isn't it mostly just pure luck?
Well, if we go back to that Bills-Patriots win game example, a 43.5 line ending up with only 24 points, I mean, yeah, it feels random.
Totally.
But the research you shared, and frankly, what successful bettors know, suggests strategy plays a really significant role. Relying only on, say, a team's average points per game from the past, that's usually not enough.
Okay, so like seeing the Kansas City Chiefs are a high-scoring machine and just automatically betting the over on their games every time.
Exactly. That's a classic trap. What if they're playing against, say, the 2024 Pittsburgh Steelers defense, which was famously tough, allowing only, 16 points per game on average?
Right, a really good defense.
That specific matchup, it completely changes the expected dynamic for the total score.
Yeah.
Suddenly, the under might look much more appealing even with the Chiefs' powerful offense. That's where strategy starts to come in.
And it's not just about the teams themselves, is it? Your sources seem to stress external factors a lot.
Oh, absolutely critical.
Mm-hmm.
Huge. Weather, like we talked about with that extreme wind, that's a big one.
Definitely.
Or player injuries. Think about it. One of the articles noted, if a star quarterback like Patrick Mahomes is suddenly ruled out,
Right, yeah.
the line for that game's total score will almost certainly drop. maybe significantly,
Mm.
because the whole team's offensive potential just shifted dramatically.
So the smart bettors are looking beyond just the basic stats.
Exactly. They factor in these real-world nuances. They're trying to find potential value where the set line might not fully account for those conditions yet.
All right, so you understand the basics, you know it's not just pure chance. But how do you actually use this understanding? Like when you're trying to make a smart bet, what are the challenges in finding reliable information? Seems like there's a ton out there.
That's probably the biggest challenge, honestly. Information overload, you've got the sports books setting lines, you have countless analysts offering opinions, social media is just buzzing
Yeah,
constantly.
Boise.
The data is everywhere, but figuring out what's actually reliable versus what's just noise or hype, that's tough.
Like that example you shared from 2023, an ex-post hyping an over-under in basketball. I think it was 215.5, based on some general scoring trends,
Right, but it completely ignored a crucial piece of info.
which was,
The star player had picked up an ankle injury just before the game, and sure enough, the game ended up way under, only 190 total points.
ouch. So that's a perfect example of bad or incomplete data leading you astray.
Exactly, and the research you found also points out that sometimes even the odds or promotions from sports books, well, they might be designed more to balance their own books, manage their risk or encourage bets on one side.
Rather than being a pure reflection of the actual probability.
Precisely. There was a 2024 Forbes piece on betting psychology that touched on this. It's not always just about predicting the score.
Okay, so with all that noise and potentially misleading stuff,
hmm
where do you turn for trustworthy information? What are the reliable sources?
You have to focus. First, official team injury reports. Non-negotiable. You need the facts there.
Makes sense?
Then, reliable weather forecasts, especially for outdoor sports, seems obvious but crucial.
Yeah.
And then advanced analytics platforms. Your research mentioned Pro Football Focus, PFF. They claimed back in 2024 that their models helped predict, I think it was 62% of NFL over-under outcomes correctly that season.
Okay, 62% is definitely better than a 50-50 coin flip.
Significantly better. These platforms use deep statistical analysis, going way beyond just points per game. They look at matchups, efficiencies, pace.
Pace seems important in basketball.
Huge. Or in hockey, a team's power play efficiency. Like the 2024-25 Toronto Maple Leafs leading the league, scoring on 25% of their power plays. That often pushes their game totals higher.
So knowing those specific team dynamics is key.
It is. That's the kind of reliable data that shifts you from just guessing towards having a real strategic approach. You're using actual evidence.
Okay, let's maybe zoom out a bit beyond just the team stats and the obvious injuries or weather. What other, maybe broader factors influence these game totals according to the research?
Well, matchups are huge, as we touched on. A really high-powered offense going against a notoriously weak defense. That's often
Yes.
a recipe for a high score, pushing towards the over.
Like the 2023 Super Bowl, Chiefs and Eagles.
Perfect example. Both teams had top 10 offenses. The line was set around 51.5, I think, and they blew past it, combined for 74 points.
Wow, yeah.
But then you flip that, right?
Two elite defenses trying to stop each other.
Exactly. Think about the 2024 Browns versus Ravens game. Ended 13-10. The line was maybe 39.5. Classic example of the underhitting when two really dominant defenses clash. Low-scoring affair.
And weather keeps coming up. You mentioned that 2024 college football game in Florida.
Yeah, where a sudden thunderstorm basically just shut down the passing game for both teams, made it really hard to move the ball through the air. The total ended up at just 28 points against the line of 48.5.
Big difference.
Environmental factors can be absolute game changers, and sometimes odds makers struggle to fully price those into an early line, especially if it's unexpected.
Anything else? Less obvious stuff.
Well, interestingly, even the time of day can apparently play a role. One study you provided, from 538 back in 2023, and noted that early afternoon basketball games tend to average about 5 points lower in total score compared to evening games.
Really?
Why? Potentially things like travel fatigue, different pregame routines. It's subtle, but the data suggested a pattern. Crowd energy might even have a tiny effect, though that's much harder to quantify reliably.
So it sounds like recognizing all these variables, the specific team matchup styles, the weather impact, injuries, maybe even time of day, helps you spot potential inconsistencies.
Yeah.
Where the line set by the bookie might not quite match the likely reality.
That's exactly it. It's about seeing where the line might be, mispriced because it perhaps hasn't fully accounted for all these dynamic real-time elements. That's where the strategic edge comes from.
Okay, this is great. Let's try to get practical now. Based on all this research you gathered, what are some Expert tips for approaching over-under betting effectively.
Mhm.
How can someone listening use this?
Okay, first and foremost, and maybe the least exciting but most important, discipline. You have to treat it like an investment, not like playing the lottery. Set a budget. Decide what you're comfortable risking per week or per bet. Maybe it's $100 a week, maybe less, whatever works for you, and then stick to it religiously. Avoid chasing losses or making impulsive bets based on emotion or just hype you see online.
Okay, discipline and budget. Got it. And you mentioned shopping around for the best lines earlier. How critical is that?
Oh, it's crucial. The sources highlighted examples like that 2024 OddsShark comparison. It showed DraftKings had an NFL games total at 42.5 points, while FanDuel had the exact same game listed at 43.5.
Wow. A full point difference.
Not just a half point, a full point, or sometimes it is just a half point difference. But that seemingly small gap can literally be the difference between winning your bet and losing it. So always check multiple sports books if you have access to them. Get the best number you can.
Makes sense. And staying updated on news, especially injuries, seems vital right up until game time.
Absolutely vital. You need to follow reliable news sources. People like ESPN's Adam Schefter on X for football injury reports, for example. They often have the latest info.
Yeah, he's usually first.
One of the notes you had used that hypothetical 2025 example, an update on Luka Doncic's ankle injury, potentially shifting a Mavericks game's over-under line by like 3 points right before tip-off.
Right. That late-breaking news is gold.
It's incredibly valuable information if you're trying to make an informed bet just before the game starts.
So pulling it all together, understanding the matchups, the external factors, using reliable data, staying updated, the ultimate goal is to find those lines that seem off.
Yeah.
Those mispriced lines.
Exactly. This is where all the homework really pays off. You're looking for situations where your analysis suggests the line isn't quite right.
Like the hockey example you mentioned.
Yeah, if you see a game between two teams that are just famously terrible offensively, like bottom 10 in the league for scoring goals, but the over-under line is set relatively high, maybe 6.5 goals,
Okay.
well, your research might strongly suggest the under is the much more likely outcome. And in those cases, the under might be significantly undervalued. It might offer better odds than the standard Nagish 110. You might find it at plus 110 or plus 120 even.
So you're looking for situations where the data you've gathered really contradicts the number the odds makers have put out there.
Precisely. You shared that statistic from StatMuse for 2024. It showed the under hit in something like 65% of the games between the low-scoring Anaheim Ducks and Chicago Blackhawks that season.
Right, 65%. That's a strong trend.
That kind of specific historical data reinforces the idea. You can identify situations where the line doesn't seem to accurately reflect the most probable outcome based on team tendencies, matchups, and all the other factors we've discussed.
It takes work, though.
Oh, definitely. Finding these opportunities takes research and effort. But that's how you build a strategic approach. That's how you aim for more consistent wins over time and move far, far away from just random chance or guessing.
So wrapping this all up then, this deep dive into over-under betting, it really shows us it's definitely not just about rolling the dice or pure luck.
Not at all. I mean, there's always some element of chance in sports, obviously, but over-under betting is, or can be, a sophisticated wager. It's focused on analyzing the potential total outcome of a game.
And it's influenced by that complex mix of things we talked about.
Yeah, team performance, sure, but also specific matchups, those crucial external factors like weather and injuries, and critically, your ability to find and analyze reliable data sources effectively.
It really rewards doing your homework.
Absolutely, and maintaining discipline, looking critically at the numbers presented to you, not just taking them at face value.
So hopefully this deep dive gives you, the listener, that foundational knowledge, enough to look past just the surface line and approach this type of wager with, well, significantly more information and strategy.
Right. It helps you shift your mindset. You move from just making a guess to trying to make an informed decision based on the data and the factors you've uncovered in your own research.
You know, thinking about how sophisticated the odds makers' models must be, using just tons and tons of historical data and analytics, it's still fascinating how much something like a sudden gust of wind or a last-minute ankle tweak on a star player, or even just the simple fact that it's an early afternoon game, how much those things can potentially derail the predictions and create that value we talked about.
It's true. The real world intervenes.
It really makes you wonder about that ongoing battle, doesn't it? Between the pure statistical analytics trying to predict everything and just the unpredictable, sometimes messy reality of sports played by humans in changing environments. How much can data truly capture chaos?
That's a fundamental question, isn't it? Definitely plenty to consider next time you look at those over-under lines.